Hello, hello, and welcome to another podcast episode of Overpowering Emotions, where I talk all things big emotions, emotion regulation, and of course, resilience. Last week, I started talking about the foundation of the emotion regulation piece, and that is really mindfulness of the three different parts of emotion. So, jumping right in from last week, I want to dig into that mindfulness a little bit more because mindful awareness of emotions is the very most important skill our kids need to learn to regulate their emotions, and probably a lot of adults as well. It's that mindful awareness that is going to help us. Now, it involves a few things, and there's really a lot of moving pieces here that I want to talk about. And so it's kind of planting seeds, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. We're not going to jump in, right? You listen to this and you think that you can go help them be aware of panic attacks tomorrow. No, there's a lot of precursor little steps that we need to do. So the framework from last week, if you weren't here, if you didn't listen to last week, first is the physiological experience. That's what's happening inside the body whenever the emotion shows up. Second is the awareness of any associated thoughts or those pictures that come up, right? Oftentimes there's flashes of pictures, scary pictures. And then the third is their behavioral response. Now, when we're looking at that mindfulness, the reason why we want to be mindful is so that we can keep that prefrontal cortex online. We can stay present to see what is happening in our body, realizing that it's manageable, right? Keeping that prefrontal cortex online to pick up what's happening internally, but also externally, all of those external cues, right? And we're going to make sure that they're not getting carried away with that big knot of emotion and ruminate, panic attack. In the moment of big emotions, if you know me, we're never going to do the relaxation. I would never say relaxation or meditation. I'm more concerned about keeping that prefrontal cortex online. That's the rationalizing, calming, problem-solving brain. We got to keep that online. That's where the mindful awareness is so critical for building that emotion regulation and that resilience as well. So when we're looking at mindfulness a little closer, I mean, this is the first step. And I do have other episodes on mindfulness, so we can, do look back at those just to round out the full discussion about why we focus so much on mindfulness. I'll put them in the show notes. But again, it's not meditation. It's not relaxation. I would never use those for anxiety or resilience, right? It's just another trap where we fall into where we're making that relaxation the outcome. And we don't want to worsen anxiety. And that's what ends up happening, right? When we try to change our emotional experience or when we try to control that experience. I will say, though, just on a side step, if kids are practicing relaxation proactively throughout the day, you're doing some relaxation and meditation throughout the day as a proactive strategy, that's fantastic. You're lowering their overall arousal level. We know that there's a lot of good research supporting it, but it's not an anxiety, tool, and especially in the moment, right? It's all about being mindful. That's what is helpful because they need to be able to. So, I mean, reducing their overall arousal level, fantastic. That's going to make it easier to manage emotions. But in the moment, it's not about trying to fix it or change it or distract themselves or calm themselves. It's about being deliberately focused on what is happening non-judgmentally. We're observing what's happening around us and within us, right? Including all of the gross thoughts and feelings and physical sensations, all of that. So we need to acknowledge and accept those experiences. So that's really important. When we try to focus on breathing or relaxation, it's usually for the wrong reason. We're trying to get rid of those experiences. But it's through those experiences, when they learn that they can handle them in that moment, even the grossness, that's where they're going to start realizing, hey, I can handle it. We know one of the greatest vulnerabilities with people who end up having emotional disorders like anxiety or depression, they view their experiences negatively, right? Like something was wrong with me. This is a terrible feeling. I should never feel this way. I'm never going to feel better. That is one key vulnerability that keeps them stuck in an emotional disorder. And so we need them to learn to be objective. And so if we tell them you got to relax, they're just going to fuel that story, that vulnerability that something is wrong with me when I can't relax in the moment. So being able to say, panic attack has shown up. I hate the feeling, but it's settling in. There it is. Yep. I can feel the pressure on my chest. Oh, it's going to tell me that I'm going to try to pass out, right? So that's truly where we need to get to. And I will tell you, if you plant these seeds and do it, you can get there. One of my kiddos had a panic attack herself a few weeks ago. We were kind of exploring a scary place to be, admittedly. I was even a little bit nervous, and it actually reminded us of a horror film sets, and like we're just waiting for monsters to jump out at us. But she had a little bit of a panic attack, and I was able to walk her through being able to drop into the body, that mindful awareness of what was happening with that panic attack. She was able to keep her prefrontal cortex online. Even just the other day, I was working with a teenager who started having a panic attack, really getting upset. And through the work that we've been able to do and through the good coaching, she was able to drop into the body, and like immediately she was able to get back on task, right? But we can't do that when we're trying to force it away or do different things. So we want to face the full experience. They can learn that they can master that emotion regulation. And that's where true resilience is. So mindfulness is what helps with that emotion regulation, because they're observing their feelings without reacting impulsively. So that is what's going to reduce the stress and the anxiety and the anger and the depression, along with all of the other problematic coping responses that they usually do, like avoidance or, freaking out or whatever else is going on, usually because, fight or flight, and it's still avoidance. So that's only going to strengthen anxiety. Because like I said, worry keeps us stuck. So we really need to show them how to get unstuck from the past or the future. That's that's what's negatively influencing our emotional responses, right? And so if we're always caught in the past as something bad that has happened, we're usually still worrying about the after effect of it, right? Or worrying about the future. It's like we're in a fog. So we want to have that flashlight here on the present moment, so we can realize, when you've got that flashlight through the fog, you can see very clearly, and you can see there's no danger right here. When we're not paying enough attention to the current context in which the emotions are occurring, that means, again, they're missing out on valuable corrective information, that they are safe and that they can handle it. So we always remember that they absolutely need to be mindful to stay here and attend to that context, to keep that prefrontal cortex online. I know I'm very repetitive, but this is the important part. We got to keep that prefrontal cortex online so that they can learn from the corrective information that's around here versus getting sucked into those worries. That's just going to intensify the emotional experience and just make it worse. Okay. So it's all about to learn. That's what we want with the mindfulness. Before we can start targeting their internal emotional experiences, with a panic attack or with big upset, because right now, if you try to do it, they're just going to probably get more upset. So we have to have this strong foundation of mindfulness. And that's really the focus for today. It's planting those seeds. So I'll just give you a bunch of ideas. And I know I've had other, episodes in the past, but these ones are really building up. And I really want to stress how important this really is. Get started on it today. If you're an educator in your class, you can start working on it, right? At home, you can be working on it every single day. They don't need to take more than a minute or two to do, right? We're building skills so that eventually they can apply them to the emotional experiences. You can't just do it once and hope that next time they get really upset with a big emotional meltdown that they're going to be able to use these skills. So we need to build that foundation, because otherwise we're never going to expect them to apply it to their emotional experiences. So like I said, when they have it, if they have enough practice, they can, even in the middle of a huge emotional meltdown, they can stay here with their prefrontal cortex online. I hate personally mindful breathing. I think that we are using it for the wrong thing when we're take deep breaths, take deep breaths. You're trying to get rid of the anxiety. But one mindful practice is just to notice your breathing. We're not trying to change it, right? We're not changing it. We're not trying to decrease their exhale or get bigger breaths. It's not about trying to breathe into certain parts of their body. When we're mindful, we're not trying to change anything. It is just noticing. So maybe they're counting their breaths. Maybe they're noticing where in their body they feel the expansion of their breath or where it's leaving their bodies. So that would be the only thing that if we were to focus on building our mindfulness muscle, that could be one activity. I personally hate it and don't do it myself. My preference is doing body scans. So we can either scan our body from head to toe. That's my favorite, going from the top of your head all the way down to your feet, and even just like feeling your feet supported on the floor. That's my favorite. When you go head to toe, it's very grounding, right? It just helps you feel very grounded versus, flying away with the rumination and all of the worries. You can go toe to head, which is more energizing. So if you have, just so you know, if you've got kiddos who are just tired and lethargic all the time, if you go from toe to head, that can actually help with that energy piece. There's lots of apps. I'm actually using one right now. It's called Balance, I think, and it's free for the first year. It's not necessarily my favorite, but I do love that it's free for a year. So you can really try it and see if you're going to even, that's what I'm doing. Am I even going to use this long enough to actually, is it worth paying for? But there's lots of free apps. You can even just do a body scan, like on YouTube, right? You can get a body scan, just where it's guiding you through that. But essentially, all you're doing is getting them to sit or lie down comfortably, and you're going to progressively focus on each part of their body, noting any tension or discomfort or tingling, just being able to label. What does it feel? The top of your head, your forehead, your eyes, your nose, your chin, your cheeks, going all the way down. It's not about changing anything. It's not progressive muscle relaxation where you're trying to tense and relax. You can do that. That's another thing that you could be doing. But right now, I want to bring awareness. We're just noticing what's happening in the body and describing it. This is my favorite. That's my preferred one because it's a skill that we're going to be building to when we start looking at that internal self-awareness of our emotional experiences. You can take kids on a nature walk and just encourage them to notice the colors and the textures and the sounds of the world around them. Or you can just focus on an object that you've got. Like, I've got a little bookmark that my daughter made me. So I can just notice it's textured paper and I can see where the colors are kind of shifting into each other. So just describe as many details as they can. That's just visually. I can feel it. What does it feel like when I'm touching it? Use as many senses as they can. That can be really helpful. Using senses is actually a good one anyway. You could put objects into a little bag, right, that they can't see. And without looking, they have to put their hand in and they have to describe, like, okay, I'm feeling something. Ooh, it's soft on the middle, but on the outside, it's kind of rough on one of the edges, right? So they have to describe what they're feeling and maybe guess what it is that they think that they're touching. You could do mindful eating, right? It could be during a meal where they're eating without any distraction. They're focusing on the smells and the sights and the flavors, right? The sensations of each of those mouthfuls. You could have a taste test where you close their eyes and they have to again, smell and taste and what are the textures and just noticing and maybe guessing what it is, but having them eat slowly, savoring each bite, paying attention to taste, to texture, to the smell. All of those things can be really helpful. Just describing all the sensual things, right? That's important. Mindful movement is always helpful. It could be walking across the kitchen mindfully, being aware as they're picking up one foot, being able to lift it up where it lands, their heel lands and starts walking, their foot starts going down and through, and then their next foot picks up. So just noticing where their leg bends, where it straightens, where it goes back out and whatever, just noticing all of those movements, the shift of the weight through the foot. Doing something like yoga can be really helpful too, or any stretch, really. That's so fantastic because they can really feel the stretches in their body. I love doing giraffe where you're stretching up over your head, right? Or just to the side or your neck, just noticing where in your body you're feeling that stretch and what does it feel like? Describe it. So just having that awareness of body movements or the stretches. I love adding in mindful gratitude. I mean, gratitude is just so good for our well-being anyway. So I encourage everybody to do it as part of their daily routine. But if you're doing it mindfully, when you're chatting about whatever it is that you're grateful for, what you appreciate, or something good that happened through the day or something, whatever it is you're grateful for, drop into the body. Notice what you feel in your body as you're talking about that. And even just now, if you think about something that you're grateful for, even put a little smile on your face. Notice where you're smiling and notice where you feel that gratitude in your body. For me, it's in my chest. It's a lightening, right? Where stress, it's usually pushing down. It's pressure in my chest. It's actually a lightening. You could just sit and listen. Just notice what sounds that they hear around them. Maybe you can play sounds. I've done this before too, where you get different sound clips and like different animals or of anything, and they have to describe what they hear, and you can make a game out of it, right? Guess what it is? Penguin is a great one. It doesn't sound like what you would think penguins sound like. So I'd love for you to have a regular practice, whether it's in, if you're a clinician in your counseling sessions, just throw it in at the beginning, at the end of every session, in your own home, when you leave the house, when you come home at the end of the day, in your classroom, at the start of the class, at the end of the class. We hear it all the time, and this is really the foundation of resilience. It doesn't take a lot of time, and it's so easy to do. You don't need to have anything. It's just the world around you. This is so important. I know it sounds cheesy, and that's why I talked so much last time in the beginning of this one. Remember the purpose of mindfulness. It's to keep our prefrontal cortex online. That is the secret to be able to regulate our emotions. If it's too hard to spare a minute through the day, maybe, to add in something else, sometimes that's tricky. Throw mindfulness into activities kids are already doing in their day. Maybe every time they're washing their hands, they're paying attention to, it could be the motions of turning on the soap or like the tap, but it could just be noticing the water on their hands or when they brush their teeth. So encouraging them to complete activities they're already doing mindfully. Again, it's not a sitting meditation. It doesn't have to be something in addition to everything else that they're doing, just practicing being here in the present moment. The more they can do that, the easier the next steps become when we're looking specifically at emotion regulation. Now, I'm going to expand on this and talk about how we can start directing that mindful awareness to our emotional experiences. But truly, we need to make sure kids are working on these mindful activities every day to make the rest easier, because it's going to be really hard. And especially some of the activities that I'm going to be sharing with you in the weeks to come, they're kind of engaging. So kids might be like, oh, this is awesome. And they're going to forget to drop into their body. So we want to make sure that they have a lot of practice doing that. So when we're saying to drop into their body, they actually know what we're talking about. Because if they're not aware, especially when emotions come up, they're going to just get knotted with those big emotions, right? They're going to then have their aggressive behaviors or clingy behaviors, relying on others to help them cope. So that mindfulness, that's what helps them navigate whatever stress and adversity and frustration and friendship fires and whatever else they're facing that comes up. I mean, there's so many other benefits too. Like, it does improve their concentration, their attention span, their IQ, their cognitive skills. I mean, there's so many different ways that this mindfulness is so helpful. So why not practice it? I think it's really important. So really, this is the homework. How can we incorporate mindfulness throughout the day? I'll leave it there for today. Thank you for joining me. Go help those kiddos be bold and courageous, and I will see you next time.